Sometimes, the world feels full of secrets, like the hush before a summer storm. A silence brimming with potential, hovering over us, waiting to break. And right now, something massive is knocking at the door of America's soul, a tidal wave of energy, hope, fear, and maybe even change. I can't help but be swept along with it, wide-eyed, heart-pounding, not just as an analyst, but as someone watching the pulse of life under my own skin. I'm talking about the season of tax refunds, yes, but hear me out, it's not what you think. If you crave this kind of deep-diving storytelling, the pulse and poetry inside the numbers, now's the time to subscribe to Crypto 101 Central. Hit that button and let yourself into this circle. And don't forget to tap the bell, so you won't miss the stories that move not just the charts but something inside you, too. So here's the scene, quiet, unremarkable, but humming with tension. All across the country, people are waking up to the soft glint of hope on their banking app screens. For most of us, the word taxes is a grim shadow, something you must do, a slow bleed from your sense of agency. But a tax refund? Oh, that feels electric. Every year, it's a spark, sometimes faint, sometimes bright enough to light the whole room. But this year, it is different. This is no ordinary refund trickle. It is a flood, perhaps the largest America has ever seen, shaped, depending on how you squint, by both politics and fate. The so-called crypto president, his words, not mine, delivered a bill so big you can't help but feel its weight. Numbers so vast they flicker at the edge of comprehension. Well over $100 billion US dollars, says Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, swelling toward bank accounts in the first quarter. Imagine that. An enormous wave of liquidity stretched across countless lives like a sunrise creeping over the horizon. Some call it a righteous windfall. Others, a cynical ploy, an attempt to buy the country's affection. But politics are not what quicken my pulse tonight. No, it's the strange alchemy of money. How a sudden windfall can transform not only markets, but the very air we breathe. Most refunds won't land all at once. Morgan Stanley suggests that a large majority is paid out by late March, a wave gathering speed in the rearview mirror, now crashing through this second half of the month. I can't help picturing all those accounts blooming with unexpected money, a quiet miracle or a bittersweet reckoning, depending on the scenery outside your window. But the burning question everyone's asking, what happens next? Do we relive those wild, mythic days of the stimulus checks, when asset charts soared like fireworks, erratic and beautiful? Or is this another animal entirely? No easy answers, just the thrum of a nation holding its breath. Trump once called himself the crypto president, swearing that America would be the world's sanctuary for digital assets. Now, he throws open the stage curtains for this so-called liquidity event. A poetic phrase if there ever was one, shimmering with both promise and peril. I close my eyes and see it. The echoes of that pandemic bull run, stimulus money dropping, market graphs snapping to attention, a collective gamble, as if hope and risk ran side by side, hand in hand. The past tempts us to believe in cycles, that history can be summoned with the right sequence of bills and blessings. But is it really that simple? Let's trace the river. The high end. A massive pool of refund money entering the system. Suppose just a small percentage slips into exchanges or brokerage accounts. Suddenly billions could be moving through markets that live and die by the marginal buyer. Even a modest fraction directed toward crypto would represent significant inflows for a sector where relatively small shifts in capital can move prices. And the on-ramp is so much easier now, just a tap for an ETF, as simple as buying a share in Apple or the S&P 500. Yet beneath the thrill, a current of pain. Surveys tell the same story. For many, the refund is already spent long before it arrives. One major bank found that a large portion of households expect little or nothing back, and among those who do receive refunds, many will use the money to pay down debt, groceries, rent, car repairs. Other surveys paint an even darker picture. A majority say refunds are going straight toward basic living expenses. Rising costs have forced many to depend on this money simply to stay afloat. It is hard, sometimes, to balance the romance of the markets against the burdens of reality. Federal Reserve data offers glimpses through a window. Total household debt now hovering near record highs, measured in the tens of trillions of dollars. The weight of high-interest credit cards and the shadow of student loans rest heavily across the country's conscience. So, why all this fixation on crypto? Because markets do not dance to the rhythm of the average. They leap to the song of the outlier. A fraction of refund money, funneled quickly and recklessly into risk, can carve its movements into the charts, especially in the wiry, rapid-fire world of digital assets. Sometimes I can almost smell the energy, the same fever that sparked the meme stock frenzy, the surges that followed government stimulus checks during the pandemic years. The temptation to believe in a new golden bull run is palpable, seductive, but dangerous. Memories have long shadows. For every viral story of a stimulus check transformed into a kingmaker trade, there are 1,000 lived realities of bills paid, debts trimmed, and dreams deferred. In data, I find clarity. Surveys from the Federal Reserve showed that households didn't pour the majority of stimulus money into markets. A large share went to savings, another significant portion went toward paying down debt, and only a smaller fraction was used for spending. Later rounds followed a similar pattern. Many saved, many paid off obligations, and only a minority took meaningful financial risks. But then, in those mythic days, a subset did take their windfalls and ran, and their moves became legend. Academic research tied stimulus payments to bursts of speculation in meme stocks, a sign that small ripples can create big waves in corners of the market where capital moves quickly. And yes, researchers also observed spikes in Bitcoin buying activity around the time stimulus checks landed. It was statistically visible, even if the overall share of funds entering crypto was small. Not a mass migration, but a spark that briefly caught the wind. A whisper. But markets sometimes react strongly to whispers if they arrive at the right moment. Yet memes have power, and stories, once told, gather their own gravity. Social media minted the legend of the Bitcoin stimulus trade. Even mainstream headlines let it breathe and thrive. And there's something to be said for a meme. Sometimes the story we tell ourselves is the thing that pushes us to act. Other studies tie the cushion of a sudden cash injection to a willingness for risk. A few bold souls can tilt the whole table. That is the real riddle. Price only needs the marginal buyer. So we come back to today, this moment trembling on the edge of something. Where could it go? If the wave matches its promise, if billions do move, a handful of bullish roads open up ahead. Picture it. Some of us, flush with refunds, itching for risk, buying a little Bitcoin, a slice of ether, chasing whichever token lights our imagination on fire. Maybe it's not the majority. Maybe only a few. And yet, if they move at once, the impact can outweigh the intent. Altcoins can surge on tiny flows. The chase for a narrative, the craving to front-run a pump. Sometimes it's enough for the crowd to believe, for the spark to jump from one trader's heart to the next. Or maybe it's quieter, more elegant. Shift into ETFs, anonymous and seamless, the refund money spilling into digital assets under the radar but still reshaping the landscape. Brokerage inflows rather than exchange fireworks, but just as real. And, of course, traders are watching each other, waiting for a breath of bullishness to turn into a tidal surge of hope, leverage, and raw emotion. But the bear waits, too, and not every path is green. This is not 2021. Retail energy is scattered. Crypto's luster has dulled to some, its crowd drifting to new pastures. Recent industry earnings have shown signs of cooling activity among everyday traders. The speculator's fire, for now, flickers rather than roars. Plus, tax season is unforgiving. It can send money flying one way, but it can pull it back the other. Many owe Uncle Sam this year. That's selling, not buying. And macro stress lingers. The world is noisy with war, supply chains creak, and inflation nips at the edges of every paycheck. The winds could shift at any moment, clearing the sky or darkening it further. If you've been riding along with me this far, let me pause and ask. Like what you're hearing? Hit that like button. It fills this digital room with energy and helps others find their way here. If you feel the tug of these questions, leave a comment. How will you move when your refund lands? Will hope win out over worry? At the end, we're storytellers of our own journey. Sometimes the check is a lifeline. Sometimes, a lottery ticket. Sometimes, just another entry in the ledger of ordinary days. But every now and then, as America's tax season meets crypto's endless pitch for tomorrow, the lines blur, and the charts pulse with human longing and risk. What happens next depends on 1,000 near-invisible threads. Your decision, mine, the choices of strangers you'll never meet. All a volume, all a potential wave, all a story still unwritten. If you crave more of this, the deeper stories behind the surges, the human heartbeat under the algorithm, subscribe to Crypto 101 Central. And don't forget to hit the bell and let yourself know when I'm back again. While you're here, look over to that video on your right. Let's journey together into what makes us risk, dream, and try again.